The rule was the first thing they taught you at Bowman's Reach, before they showed you where to sleep or how the water rationing worked. A woman named Esme said it to me at the gate while she was still patting me down for bites. She said it the way you tell a child not to put their hand on a stove. Don't move at dawn. Not before, not during, not for 40 minutes after. If you are caught outside the wire at first light, you stop where you are, you lie flat, and you do not get up until the sun is fully off the horizon. If you are in a vehicle, you kill the engine, and you stay inside with the windows up and your face below the dash. You do not run, you do not drive, you do not stand. I asked her why. She said, because that's when they listen. I had been on the road for 9 months by then. I had heard 100 rules in 100 settlements, and most of them were nonsense built out of one bad night somebody never recovered from. Don't whistle after sundown. Don't eat from the orange cans. Don't speak the name of the place you came from until you've been here a week. People build superstition out of grief because grief without a shape will eat them. I knew that. I had stopped arguing about rules a long time ago. You nod, you follow them, you stay alive long enough to leave. But I remember the way Esme said it. Flat. The way you'd read a manifest. Like she was not asking me to believe anything, only to comply. I want to be clear about what I'm doing here. This is a record. I am keeping it on a yellow legal pad in the back of a Toyota pickup that is no longer running, with a pen I took from a dentist's office in what used to be Carrollton. I am writing this because there are 3 of us left, and I do not think all 3 of us are going to make it to the next checkpoint, and somebody needs to know what we learned. Somebody after us. If you are reading this, you are probably the person who found the truck. I am sorry about the smell. I am sorry about a lot of things. I am going to tell you what we knew and what we didn't know and what we found out, in that order because the order matters. The rule we were taught was not wrong. It was incomplete, and the incompleteness is what killed Theo. I want to start by telling you about Theo, because if I start with the dawn, I will lose my nerve. Theo was the youngest of us, which is a thing you have to understand was rare by then. He was 19. He had been 12 when it happened. He and Dee remembered the before only as a kind of warm television show his brain had played in another room. He talked about cereal sometimes, the way other people talked about lovers. He had a specific brand he missed. I won't write it down because it makes me sad. He was not my son. I want to say that first because the way I am going to write about him is going to sound like he was. He attached himself to our group at a trade post outside what used to be Hutchins about 4 months in. He had been alone for 2 years, and he had the look people get when they have been alone for 2 years, which is the look of someone whose face has forgotten what it's for. We took him because Marisol said we should, and Marisol was usually right about people. Marisol is the 3rd of us. She is 46 and she was an anesthesiologist before, and she is the reason I am still walking. She set my ankle in the 2nd month, and she pulled a molar in the 5th. And she has, on 3 separate occasions, made the call about whether someone in our group was turning. She is calm in a way that I have come to understand is not calm at all, but a kind of permanent low-grade exhaustion that resembles calm from the outside. She has a daughter, whom she has not seen since the 2nd week of the collapse. The daughter was at a university in another state. Marisol does not talk about her except once, when she was very drunk on something Theo had found, and what she said then I am not going to write down either. So, that was us. Me, Marisol, Theo. We had a working pickup, a working sedan, 14 gallons of fuel BE between them, 2 rifles with maybe 60 rounds total, a handgun with 11, a medical kit Marisol guarded like a child, 4 sleeping bags, a tarp, a hand crank radio, 6 gallons of water, and roughly 9 days of food if we were honest with ourselves, and 12 if we lied a little. We were trying to get from Bowman's Reach to a place called the Pinnacle, which was rumoured to be a working community on what used to be a ski resort, 340 miles north. 340 miles is not a long drive in the world I grew up in. In this world, it was a campaign. It was 4 to 5 days if everything went right, which nothing ever does. The rule about dawn was supposed to make it possible. Let me explain how movement worked then, because if you don't understand the logistics, the rest of this won't make sense. The infected, we called them the quiet ones, because we had stopped calling them anything dramatic by the 3rd year, did not behave the way the early reports said they would. They were not fast. They were not loud. They did not swarm, mostly. They moved in loose, ambient patterns through whatever environment they had ended up in, and they responded to sound and motion within a radius that varied person to person, but averaged about 30 meters. If you stayed quiet and you moved slowly and you didn't draw a line of motion across their sight line, you could walk past one at 5 meters and it would not engage you. We had all done it. Theo had walked through a parking lot in what used to be Ardmore with 4 of them in it, on purpose, on a dare, when he was new with us, and Marisol had nearly killed him for it afterward. But he had been right that it was possible. They were dangerous in 3 specific scenarios. The first was if you ran. The second was if you bled, because something in the blood smell pulled them in a way nothing else did, and they would walk for hours toward a wound. The third was dawn. Dawn was the worst. Nobody knew exactly what happened at dawn, only that it happened, and that the people who had survived long enough to make rules had agreed on this one. The theory I heard most often from a man at Bowman's Reach, who claimed to have been a biologist before, was that the infection had some kind of light-triggered circadian response, the way certain insects synchronize at twilight. He said the infected became briefly hypersensitive to sound and movement during the transition from dark to light, and that the radius of their attention expanded enormously for a window of about 40 minutes. He said it might have to do with cortisol or melatonin or something else with a long Latin name. He said it the way men used to talk about wine vintages, with a confidence that was not entirely supported by evidence. What everyone agreed on was the operational fact. If you were moving at dawn, they found you. Not the ones near you, all of them. Within some radius nobody had measured because the people who tried to measure it did not come back. So you travelled at night, when their ambient awareness was lowest, or in full daylight, when their behaviour was sluggish and predictable. You avoided twilight on both ends, and you absolutely, under any circumstance, did not move during the 40 minutes around sunrise. This was the rule. This was the one rule. I am writing all of this down because I want you to understand that we knew it. We did not break the rule out of ignorance. We broke it out of arithmetic. We left Bowman's Reach on a Tuesday. I remember because Esme had a chalkboard at the gate where she kept the day of the week, and she had updated it that morning. It was the only chalkboard I had seen in 2 years. I remember thinking that the act of keeping the day of the week was a kind of optimism I had stopped being capable of. The first leg went well. We covered 92 miles the first night on a state highway that had been cleared by some previous convoy and marked with white paint on the asphalt every quarter mile, so you would know you were still on the cleared route. We stopped before dawn at a rest area that Bowman's Reach had told us about. A concrete structure with a fenced courtyard that some group had reinforced years ago and left as a waypoint for travellers. We pulled the vehicles inside, closed the gate, and slept in shifts. Marisol took the first watch. I took the second. Theo took the third and woke us up at noon with coffee he had made on the camp stove from grounds he had been saving for what he called an occasion. He smiled when he handed me the cup. He had a real smile, Theo did, the kind that made you feel briefly that you were a person worth smiling at. The second night, we covered 78 miles. The road got worse. We had to clear 2 vehicles out of the way, one of which had a body in it that had been there long enough not to be a problem, and one of which had a body in it that had not. Marisol handled the second one. She did it the way she did everything, which was efficiently and without comment, and afterward she sat in the passenger seat of the pickup for a long time, with her hands on her knees, and did not speak. Theo asked her if she was okay, and she said yes, which was a lie we all agreed to honour. The third night was when things started to slip. We were supposed to cover about 90 miles and stop at a waypoint Bowman's Reach had marked on the map, an old grain elevator that had been used by travellers for years. We made it 60 miles before the sedan started losing oil. Marisol was driving the sedan. She pulled over and we looked at it under a flashlight. T.S. and Marisol, who was not a mechanic but had picked up more than most of us, said the head gasket was going. She said it might last another 50 miles. It might last 10. There was no way to know. We had a decision to make. We could push for the grain elevator and risk losing the sedan on the road, which would mean leaving half our supplies and one of our 2 vehicles. Or we could stop where we were, on an exposed stretch of state highway with no cover, and wait out the day and figure out a new plan. The problem with stopping where we were was that we were in the open, and the problem with the open was that the quiet ones did better in the open than people did. We decided to push. We made it 40 miles before the sedan died. It died completely, with steam and a smell, and Marisol coasted it to the shoulder and got out, and looked at the engine and said a word she did not usually use. We were on a stretch of highway between 2 towns whose names I will not give because the names don't matter. There was nothing for miles in any direction except road and the kind of low, scrubby trees that grow in the median when nobody mows it for a decade. It was 4:40 in the morning. We had maybe an hour before first light. I want to walk you through what we did, because what we did was, in my opinion, correct. I have replayed it 100 times in the last 2 days, and I still think we did the right thing with the information we had. We transferred the critical supplies, the medical kit, the water, the food, the ammunition, the radio from the sedan to the pickup. We left the sleeping bags except one. We left the tarp. We left the camp stove. We left Theo's coffee, which I want you to know hurt him more than he said. We did it quickly and quietly, and we did not panic. Then we got in the pickup, and we drove. We had 2 options. The grain elevator was 30 miles ahead. There was nothing behind us for 60. 30 miles in a working pickup is 25 minutes on clear road, 40 on bad road, and the road ahead was, by our map, supposed to be cleared. We thought we could make it before the window opened. We were wrong about the road being cleared. We were wrong about how much time we had. And we were wrong, as it turned out, about what the rule meant. The road was not cleared. About 8 miles in, we came around a curve and found 3 semi-trailers jackknifed across all 4 lanes in a configuration that looked, in the headlights, almost deliberate. There was no way around them on the asphalt. The shoulder dropped off into a drainage ditch that the pickup would not have survived. We had to go through the median to the opposite lanes, which meant getting out and cutting a section of the cable barrier with the bolt cutters Marisol kept under the seat for exactly this kind of problem. It took us 19 minutes. I timed it. When we got back in the truck, the sky was already changing. Not light yet. But the black was thinning at the edges. I have spent enough time outside in the last 3 years to know what that means. We had maybe 12 minutes. Marisol drove. She drove fast, faster than was safe, on a road that had not been driven in months and was full of debris we couldn't always see. The pickup was rattling. Theo was in the back seat with his rifle across his lap and his face very still. I was in the passenger seat with the map on my knees, calling out distances. 20 miles to the elevator, 15, 12. The sky kept changing. At 10 miles out, I told Marisol we should stop. I said it once, quietly. She did not slow down. I understood why. Stopping in the open was not a survival plan. Stopping in the open was a delay of the same outcome. If we stopped, we were on foot in flat terrain with no cover at the worst possible time of day. The truck was the only thing between us and what was coming. At 8 miles out, we saw the first one. It was standing in the middle of the road, just standing there. Its back was to us, and it did not turn when our headlights hit it. Marisol slowed and went around it on the shoulder, which she should not have done because the shoulder was unstable, but she did, and the pickup tilted and almost went into the ditch and came back, and the quiet one did not move, did not even turn its head. That was the first wrong thing. By that point in the world, a quiet one in the road at 4 a.m. should have turned toward an approaching vehicle. They didn't always engage, but they always oriented. Always. It was one of the few reliable things about them. This one did not. Theo said very quietly from the back seat, "What's it doing?" Marisol said, "Drive." She kept driving. At 6 miles we saw 3 more. They were standing in a loose line across the median, facing east. Not facing us. Facing east. Toward the horizon. Toward the place where the sun was going to come up. We went past them at 50 miles an hour. And they did not turn. I want you to understand what this looked like from inside the truck, because the words on this page do not communicate it. It was not menacing in the way I had learned to recognize menacing. There was no chase, no lunge, no sound. It was 3 figures standing in a field at 4:50 in the morning, with their faces turned toward the place where light was about to come, and we drove past them, and they did not see us because they were waiting for something else. We were not what they were waiting for. That was the second wrong thing, and it was wrong in a way I did not have language for yet. We made it to the grain elevator at 5:02 in the morning. The sky in the east was the color of wet paper. The elevator was the size of an apartment building, a cluster of concrete silos with a steel-clad office structure attached, fenced and gated, with a sliding metal door big enough for a truck. There was a hand-painted sign on the gate that said, "Bowman Waypoint 3, no stay over 24, keep quiet." Somebody had taken care of this place. Somebody had been taking care of it for years. The gate was chained but not locked. Marisol got out, swung it open, ran back to the truck, drove us inside, ran back, swung the gate closed and chained it. The whole thing took her 90 seconds. I watched the eastern sky the entire time, and I will tell you that the light moved across the horizon faster than my mind wanted to accept. We pulled the truck into the loading bay of the office structure and killed the engine. 5:06. Marisol said, "Get down." We got down. I was on the bench seat. Theo was on the floor of the back seat with his rifle still across his lap. Marisol was in the driver's seat with her head below the dashboard. We had done this before. We knew how to do this. The rule was clear. You stop. You lie flat. You wait. The first 40 minutes of dawn are the rule. We waited. I want to describe what waiting feels like, because if you have not done it, you do not know. You can hear your own pulse, not metaphorically. You can actually hear it. A soft, compressed thump in your ears that you cannot stop hearing once you have noticed it. You become aware of your breathing as a sound that might carry. You become aware of the truck's metal contracting as the temperature shifts in the morning air, the small ticks and pops of cooling steel, and each one of them sounds to your stupid, frightened brain like a footstep. You wait. The light came up slowly. I could see it changing on the inside of the windshield, a gradual pinking of the dark. I could not lift my head to look out. I could only watch the dashboard get more visible. The clock on the dashboard said 5:08, then 5:15, then 5:22. Then I heard the first one. It was a soft scrape, far away, somewhere outside the fence, the sound of a foot dragging across asphalt. I have heard that sound 1,000 times in the last 3 years, and I know what it is. I held my breath. I waited. There was a pause, and then another scrape, closer, then another, then a lot of them. I will not lie and say I counted, because you cannot count footsteps when the footsteps are layered. It was the sound of many people walking slowly on a hard surface, not in step, not in any pattern, just walking. The sound moved past the fence on the north side and continued east. It did not stop at the fence. It did not engage with the structure. It passed us. It passed us. I lay on the bench seat and I listened to a multitude of dead people walk past our position in the direction of the rising sun. And I did not understand what I was hearing. Marisol whispered from the floor in front, "Did you hear that?" I whispered, "Yes." Theo from the back whispered, "They're going somewhere." We listened to them go. The sound moved east, past the elevator, past the fence, into the field on the other side of the road, and gradually faded. It took maybe 6 minutes for the last footsteps to pass out of audible range. During those 6 minutes, as none of us moved and none of us spoke after Theo's 3 words, when the sound had been gone for what felt like a long time, Marisol lifted her head an inch and looked at the clock on the dashboard and whispered, 5:31. 9 minutes left in the window. We waited for 9 minutes. We waited an extra 10 minutes after that, because none of us trusted what we had just heard. At 5:50 we sat up. I looked out the windshield of the truck. Through the open loading bay I could see a slice of the gravel yard, a slice of the gate, and a slice of the road beyond. There was nothing in any of it. No movement, no figures. Just the flat orange light of a new day on an empty road. Marisol said, "What the hell was that?" Theo said they were going toward the sun. I said, That's not what they do." We sat in the truck for a long time after that, long after the dawn window was over. None of us wanted to be the first one to open a door. We spent the day in the elevator. It was a good waypoint. Whoever maintained it had stocked it with a few useful things and a hand pump well in the yard that gave clean water, a small store of canned goods in the office, a wood stove, and a flue that vented through a baffled chimney designed to disperse smoke. There was a logbook on a desk in the office. a spiral-bound notebook that travellers had been signing for years. I read it. Most of the entries were short: date, group size, direction of travel, condition. Some had notes. Group of 4 headed north, low on fuel. Pair headed south, sick man. Solo traveller headed east, looked tired. The handwriting changed every few entries. People had been passing through this place since at least the second year of the collapse. I flipped to the back to find the most recent entries. The last entry before ours was 19 days old. A group of 3 headed north like us. The note said, quiet ones acting strange near sunrise. Recommend extra caution at dawn windows. Do not trust open ground. I showed it to Marisol. She read it twice. She said somebody else saw it. I flipped back further. About 2 months earlier, another entry. Passed through at noon, saw a cluster of infected standing still in the field east of the road, facing the sunrise direction. Did not engage. Recommend reporting to BR. 3 months earlier, don't move at dawn, don't move at dawn, don't move at dawn. We lost David. We did everything right. And we lost David anyway. They came from a direction we weren't watching. I closed the logbook. I sat with it on my knees for a while. Theo was outside working the pump, filling our jugs. Marisol was checking the medical kit on the desk next to me, doing inventory the way she did when she needed to think. Neither of them spoke. I opened the logbook again, and I flipped all the way to the front. The oldest entries were from a place that no longer existed, a community further south that had been overrun in the 4th year. The handwriting in those early entries was confident. They wrote about the dawn rule like it was settled science. Hold position, lie flat, 40 minutes, no exceptions. That was the version Esme had taught me. That was the version everyone taught. But somewhere in the middle of the logbook, maybe 3 years in, the entries about dawn started changing. People started adding notes. The window seems longer some days. Heard them moving even after sunrise, far off. A friend saw them gathering in groups before light. Never seen that before. The infection was doing something new, or it had always done it, and we were only now seeing it. I did not know which was worse. I want to take a moment here, while we are at the elevator and nothing is happening, to tell you about Marisol, because by this point in the trip, something had started shifting in her that I had not seen before, and I want to be honest about it. She had been more tired than usual. I had noticed it the first night and assumed it was just the road. She had been quieter. She had been doing the inventories more than necessary, opening the kit, checking it, closing it, opening it again. She had developed a small tic. She would touch the back of her left hand with the fingers of her right, lightly, almost a tap, 2 or 3 times in succession. When she thought I wasn't looking, I had not asked her about it. I knew Marisol. She did not respond well to being asked about things. If she wanted to tell you, she told you. If she didn't, asking would only make her go further inside. But I had noticed. That afternoon at the elevator, while she sat down on the cot in the office and pulled up her sleeve and looked at the inside of her left forearm for a long time, she did not see me see her. I was in the doorway. I should have stepped back. I didn't. There was nothing on her arm. That is what I want you to understand. There was nothing on her arm. No mark, no scratch, no discoloration. She was looking at unbroken skin, and she was looking at it the way you look at something you are afraid is going to change. She rolled the sleeve back down, and she sat with her hands on her knees, and she breathed slowly, 3 times. Then she got up and she came out of the office, and she said, We should sleep in shifts. And she did not look at me when she said it. I want to be very careful here. A scratch from a quiet one was death. Not always immediately. The infection ran on its own schedule, and schedule varied. Some people turned in 6 hours. Some people turned in 3 days. There were stories, never verified, of people who had been scratched and never turned. And those stories were the most dangerous stories of all, because they made hope possible. Marisol had not been scratched. I had been watching her for 9 months. I would have known. She would have told us. But she was looking at her arm. I did not know what to do with this information. I put it in the place in my head where I put things I would deal with later, and I went outside to help Theo with the water. We left the elevator at sundown. The plan was to drive through the night, stop before dawn at the next marked waypoint, which was a state forest ranger station about 110 miles north, sit out the dawn there, and continue. We had enough fuel in the pickup, if we were careful, to make it to the pinnacle on what we had. We had enough food and water. We had no reason to believe the next leg would be worse than the last. What we had was the logbook. We had taken it with us. I'm not going to apologize for that. The next people who came through would have to start their own. We needed it more than they did. The first part of the night went well. We covered 70 miles on a road that was, miraculously, mostly clear. We saw 3 quiet ones, all at a distance, all behaving normally, which is to say, wandering through the dark fields with no particular destination. Theo, in the passenger seat, watched them through binoculars as we passed and reported each one in a quiet voice. Marisol drove. I tried to sleep in the back and did not succeed. Around 2 in the morning, we hit a section of road where the asphalt had buckled, some kind of frost damage from a previous winter that had never been repaired, and the pickup's suspension started making a noise I did not like. Marisol slowed down. The noise got worse. She pulled over. We got out and looked under the truck with flashlights, and Marisol, who again was not a mechanic but had picked up more than most of us, said the shock on the rear left was gone. She said the truck would still drive, but it would beat itself apart on bad roads. She said we needed to stay on good asphalt or we were going to lose another vehicle. The map said the good asphalt ended in about 30 miles. The map said that after that we were on county roads. The map said the ranger station was 60 miles past the end of the good asphalt. We had a decision to make. We could press on and try to baby the truck through bad roads. We could find shelter where we were, wait a day and try to figure out an alternative. We could turn back to the elevator, which was now 70 miles behind us, and lose all the ground we had gained. We pressed on. This was the decision that killed Theo. I want to say that clearly. We pressed on, and that is what did it. Not the rule, not the infection, the decision. I make no defense of it. We were tired, and we wanted to be at the Pinnacle, and we made a bad call. I would make the same call again, probably, because the alternatives were also bad, but I will not pretend it was the only call available to us. It was the call we chose. The truck made it 12 miles past the end of the good asphalt before it stopped. It did not break catastrophically. It just stopped. The engine cut out and would not restart. Marisol popped the hood, looked at the engine, looked at me and shook her head. It was 4:18 in the morning. We were on a county road in the middle of what had probably been farmland once and was now mostly weeds. There was a barn about a quarter-mile back that we had passed. There was a tree line another half-mile ahead. There was no structure within easy reach, and the truck was useless. Marisol said, "The barn." We grabbed what we could carry: medical kit, water, ammunition, the logbook, my pad, Theo's rifle, Marisol's handgun, the radio. We left the food. We left the sleeping bags. We left almost everything. Marisol made us move fast and quietly, and we did. And we made it to the barn in about 11 minutes, which is faster than 3 exhausted people should be able to move in the dark. The barn was old. The roof was partially collapsed. There was a hayloft, mostly intact, with a wooden ladder. 2 stalls on the ground floor had not held animals in a decade and smelled like rotting wood and old straw. There was no door, only a wide opening where a door had been. It was 4:31. Marisol said, "Up." We went up the ladder. Theo went first, then me, then Marisol, who pulled the ladder up behind her once she was in the loft. The loft had hay in it, old and dry and full of mice probably, but solid. There was a window at the gable end, a small square one with no glass, through which we could see a slice of the eastern sky. The sky was already wrong, and I do not know how else to describe it. It was that thin, pale tone that means dawn is close, the tone that means you have minutes. And I looked at Marisol, and Marisol looked at me, and we both understood at the same moment that we were not going to make it to the rule. The rule says you stop where you are. We were where we were. We lay down in the hay. The barn faced east. The window at the gable end faced east. We were inside a wooden structure with a partially collapsed roof, in a hayloft with our faces pressed to the boards, less than a quarter mile from a stalled pickup truck on an empty county road, in the 40 minutes around sunrise on the 7th day of our trip to the pinnacle. I want to tell you that we lay still, and the dawn passed and we survived. I want to tell you that the rule worked, and the quiet ones did not find us, and we walked out of that barn at 6 in the morning with the world unchanged. That is not what happened. What happened was this. At 4:52 by my watch, I heard the first scrape, just like at the elevator, the sound of a foot dragging on hard ground, not on asphalt this time, on the dirt of the county road. I lifted my head an inch, just an inch, and I looked through the gable window. There was one of them in the road. It was standing about 30 meters from the barn and in the dirt facing east. Its back was to us. It was not moving. It was the same posture I had seen from the truck the night before, that strange, E-oriented stillness, like a compass needle, like an antenna. I lowered my head. I heard another scrape from a different direction, and another. The same sound, layered, gradual, the sound of many people walking slowly across a field that had once been planted with corn and was now full of weeds taller than they were. The sound came from the south, it came from the west, it came from the north. It did not come from the east. I want you to understand this. The sound came from 3 directions, and the direction it did not come from was the direction the one in the road was facing. They were converging on the eastern horizon, from every direction except the one they were going toward. We were inside the converging. We were directly underneath the line they were drawing across the landscape. I lay in the hay with my face pressed to the board. R.D. and I listened to the world fill up with quiet ones. Not just a few. Not the way the elevator had been, with footsteps passing in the road. This was different. This was many. This was, I think now, every quiet one within several miles of where we were. All of them walking, in silence, in loose lines toward the place the sun was about to come up. We were on their road. Theo was in the hay next to me. I could feel him breathing. He was trying to breathe quietly and not quite succeeding. He had his face turned toward me. His eyes were open and very wide, and he was looking at me with a question in them that I did not have an answer to. Marisol was on the other side of him. She had her hand on his back, not a comforting hand, a holding hand, a don't move hand. The footsteps got closer. Some of them reached the barn. I heard them come in through the open doorway downstairs. I heard the soft shuffle of bodies in the stalls below us. I heard one of them brush against the ladder Marisol had pulled up, which made a faint wooden knock, and I heard the body keep moving, past the ladder, through the barn, out the other side, and continue east. They were passing through. The barn was on their line, and they were walking through it the way water walks through a culvert. I do not know how many of them passed through the barn. I lost count somewhere past 40, and that was only by the sounds I could distinguish. Many were too soft to count. They moved in silence mostly, with only the occasional scrape or brush. They did not engage with each other. They did not engage with the structure. They did not engage with us, lying 10 feet above them in the hay, 3 living human bodies whose pulses they should have been able to hear across a parking lot. They walked east. The sky outside the window kept lighting up. It was 5:20 when Theo made the sound. I want to describe what happened as exactly as I can because the rest of this depends on your understanding of it precisely. Theo had been lying very still. We all had been. But Theo was 19 and Theo had been holding his breath in measured intervals for almost half an hour, and Theo's body, at some point, betrayed him. It was not his fault. I want to write that down. It was not his fault. He coughed. It was a small cough, the smallest cough a human body can make, a throat clear, almost, barely audible to me from 2 feet away. It was not loud enough, I would have said, to carry past the loft. I was wrong. There was a pause in the movement below us, not a complete stop. The footsteps continued in the distance, the ones outside the barn, the ones in the fields, but the ones inside the barn, the ones passing through the lower level, they paused. I heard the pause. It was the absence of the next footstep, which should have come and didn't. Then I heard them turn. I do not know how to describe the sound of a quiet one turning. They turn slowly. They turn with a kind of rotation of the whole body rather than just the head. There was a soft scrape of feet repositioning, multiple feet, multiple bodies, and then there was silence, and the silence was worse than the sound. They were looking up. I could not see them. I could not lift my head, but I knew, with the certainty you only get when you have lived through a particular kind of fear for years, that the quiet ones in the barn below us had stopped walking east and were now standing in the stalls with their faces turned toward the hayloft. Marisol's hand on Theo's back tightened. I saw the knuckles go white in the dimness. Don't move, I thought. Don't move, don't move, don't move. Theo did not move, but the rest of them did. I heard them turn towards us. I heard them reorient, the loose lines outside the barn shifting from their eastward march to a new direction. I heard the field sounds change. The scraping that had been moving away started moving toward. They were coming. All of them. Not just the ones in the barn, the ones in the field. The ones we could not see. They had heard a single cough from a hayloft at 5:20 in the morning, and they were turning, the way the biologist at Bowman's Reach had said they would turn, with a radius of attention that was not 30 meters but something much, much larger. The rule was about moving at dawn. That was what we had been taught. Don't move at dawn. It was not about moving. It was about being heard, and during the dawn window, anything could be heard. This is the part of the story I have been postponing. Marisol was the one who moved. She did it without warning any of us, which I think now was a kindness. She did not look at me. She did not look at Theo. She lifted herself out of the hay in one slow, continuous motion, and she went down the ladder, pulled out of the loft, set against the edge that she must have lowered while I was looking at the window. I did not see her lower it. I did not hear her lower it. I think now she had been preparing to lower it for several minutes, working at it in increments so small the sound never resolved. She climbed down into the barn. She walked out the front of the barn onto the dirt road. She walked east. She did it slowly in the way you walk past a quiet one when you don't want it to engage. Smooth, unhurried, drawing no line of motion. But she was moving. At dawn, in full view of all of them, they turned toward her. Every one of them. The ones in the barn, the ones in the field, the ones in the road. The line they had been drawing across the landscape collapsed into a single point, and the point was Marisol. And she walked east into the lightning sky, and they followed her. I watched it from the gable window. I had to lift my head to do it, and I did not care any more. Theo was next to me with his hand over his own mouth, biting his palm to stay silent, and I had my face against the boards, and I watched Marisol walk down a dirt road in the dawn with 30 or 40 quiet ones falling in behind her in a loose, terrible procession. She did not look back. She crested a small rise about 400 meters east of the barn. The sun came up behind her as she crested it. I want to describe what I saw, and I am not sure I can. She was a silhouette against the orange. The quiet ones behind her were silhouettes against the orange. They were all moving in the same direction at the same speed, and for a moment, for one terrible moment, I could not tell which silhouette was faster. She went over the rise. They went over the rise. I did not see her again. The window of dawn closed at 5:50 by my watch. I waited until 6:30 before I let Theo move. He had not made another sound after the cough. He had not moved. He had been crying, silently, the entire time, and his palm, where he had bitten it, was bleeding. And I held him for a while in the hay because there was nothing else to do. The barn was empty. The field was empty. The road was empty. Marisol had taken all of them with her, every one of them within several miles, and she had taken them east, away from us. And I do not know whether she did it because she had finally seen the mark on her arm that was not there yet but was about to be, or because she had simply decided that the rule was wrong and there was no version of the rest of the day in which all three of us survived. I want to tell you it was the second one. I want to believe it was the second one. I have not been able to make myself believe it. We climbed down out of the loft at 7. Theo had stopped crying by then. He had a face I had not seen on him before, a face that was older than 19, a face that I think now he is going to wear for the rest of his life. He picked up his rifle, and he picked up the medical kit, and he walked out into the road without speaking. I followed him. We walked east, the way Marisol had gone, because the truck was that direction, and we needed to see if any of the supplies were salvageable. We walked for a long time. The rise that Marisol had crested was about half a mile from the barn. We climbed it. On the other side was the road, continuing east, and the morning, and nothing else. No bodies, no quiet ones, no Marisol. The procession had gone somewhere we could not see, and I do not know to this day if they were still walking or if they had stopped, somewhere over the next rise or the next, the moment the sun was fully clear of the horizon. The truck was where we left it. We salvaged what we could carry. Theo did not speak. I did not speak. We started walking north on the county road in full daylight, because that was the only direction we had. We made it 22 miles that day. We walked until the sun was high, and then we found a ditch with cover, and we lay in it for a few hours during the worst of the heat. And then we walked again until evening. We saw two quiet ones, both at a distance, both behaving normally, wandering, aimless, the way they were supposed to. Whatever they did at dawn, they only did at dawn. We stopped at a farmhouse that night, an empty one that had been empty long enough to be safe. We slept in the basement, which had a small window we covered with a board. We did not speak about Marisol. Theo took the watch, and I took the watch, and we did not speak. In the morning, full morning, well after dawn, we kept walking. This went on for 4 days. I am going to compress these 4 days because they were not, in any meaningful way, eventful. We walked. We rationed. We saw quiet ones at a distance. We did not get close to any of them. We did not move at dawn. We did not move at twilight. We moved in the middle of the day, when their behavior was sluggish, and in the middle of the night, when their attention was lowest. We did what we had been taught to do. On the 4th day, Theo started coughing. I want to be careful here. A cough is not a symptom. A cough is what people do when they have been breathing dust off a county road for 4 days. A cough is what people do when they have been crying and have not eaten, and have not slept well and have been holding their breath in hay for 40 minutes. A cough is, by itself, nothing. But Theo had not coughed at all for 3 days after the barn. He had been silent. He had been performing a kind of monastic silence that I think now was his way of making up for the cough he had made in the loft. And then on the 4th day, walking along a state road, he coughed. It was not a small cough. It was a wet cough. He stopped walking. I stopped walking. We looked at each other. He said, "It's the dust." I said, "Sure." He said, "It's just the dust. I've been breathing it for days." I said, "Sure." He coughed again. It was deeper this time. He doubled over with it and put his hand on his knee and waited it out and stood up again, and his eyes were watering, gurg, and he said, "Don't." He said, "Please don't." He said, "You have to give me at least another day." I had not said anything. I had not reached for the handgun. I had not done anything except look at him. But he was 19 and he had been on the road since he was a child. And he knew, the way we all knew, what a wet cough meant on day 4 of an exposure. I want to tell you that I decided in that moment that I weighed the options, that I considered what Marisol would have done. I did not. I just stood in the road and looked at him. He was the one who decided. He sat down, right there in the middle of the asphalt in full daylight, in an empty stretch of road in a state that had been empty for years. He put his rifle down across his knees and he looked up at me and he said, "I think it was the cough. I think the cough was enough. I think it got in through my throat or my eyes or something. I think I knew yesterday." I said, "You don't know that." He said, "You don't know. I don't." I sat down in the road next to him. We sat for a while. He told me about the cereal again. He told me about a girl he had known at 12, before, who he thought now he had probably been in love with. In a way, you can only be in love with someone at 12. He told me he had wanted, more than anything else, to see what the pinnacle looked like, because Marisol had described it once, with snow, and he had not seen snow in 3 years. I listened. At one point, he said, "Do you think she did it on purpose?" I said, "Yes." He said, "I do too." He said, "I think she saw something on her arm." I said, "There was nothing on her arm." He said, "I think there was something on her arm that wasn't there yet." I did not know what to say to that. He coughed again. "It was bad this time." He said, "I want to do it myself. Is that okay?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Well, will you wait until I'm done, so I'm not by myself?" I said, "Yes." He said, "I'm sorry about the cough." I said, "It wasn't your fault." He said, "I know." He picked up the rifle. I want to tell you what came next, but I will not, because Theo asked me not to, and I am keeping the promise to a 19-year-old boy in the middle of a road. What I will tell you is that I waited until he was done. I sat with him for a long time after. I did not bury him because I had no tools and no time, and the ground was hard, but I moved him off the road, into the grass, and I covered his face with my jacket, which was the only thing I had to give him. Then I kept walking north. It is now 11 days since we left Bowman's Reach. It is 6 days since the barn. It is 2 days since Theo. I'm writing this from the back of a different pickup truck, a Toyota that I found at the side of a county road, with a quarter tank of fuel and a working battery, which is more than I had any right to expect. The truck does not run anymore because I have not been able to find a way to get it started again after I ran the battery down trying to listen to the radio. I am going to start walking tomorrow morning again. I am going to take the radio and the water and the logbook and this pad and the handgun, and I am going to leave the rifle because it is heavier than I can carry, and I am going to try to make it the last 60 miles to the pinnacle on foot. I do not know if I will make it. I am being honest with you. I am one person on foot in flat terrain with limited water and no food, and a handgun with 8 rounds in it. The arithmetic is not good. I have been thinking, in the 2 days since Theo, about what we learned, and I want to put it down here in case the next person who comes through can use it, because the rule we were taught is not enough. This is what I think now. The dawn rule is not about movement. It is about being a sound, or a heat, or some other signature inside a window when the infected are sensitized to the eastern horizon. During the window, when they are oriented outward, listening for something we do not understand and cannot perceive. If you are inside their listening, you become part of what they are listening to. The rule says don't move because moving is the easiest way to be a signature. But the rule should say don't be anything. Don't breathe loudly, don't cough, don't shift in the hay, don't be in a structure that has any acoustic signature, different from the ground. And this is the part I want you to remember, the part that took us 4 people across 2 years to learn, because Esme also told me once before I left that she had lost 2 people to dawn in the spring. The window is not exactly 40 minutes. The window starts about 10 minutes earlier than people think, before there is any visible light in the sky. We did not know this. We did not know that we were already inside the window by the time the sedan died. We thought we had time. You do not have as much time as you think. If you find yourself outside before first light, and there is any thinning at the eastern edge of the sky at all, you are already inside the window. Stop where you are. Lie flat in the dirt or in tall grass, away from structures. Do not get into a vehicle. Do not get into a building. Structures concentrate sound, and they concentrate quiet ones who are passing through, and you do not want to be in the path of the passing. Lie in the open, lie in the open. Do not breathe deeply, do not move, and do not cough. If you cough, the person you are with may save you. They may walk out into the road and take the procession east. That is the only counter to the cough that we found, and it is not a counter. It is a sacrifice, and I do not know how to tell you to ask someone for it. I do not know how to tell you to give it. Marisol gave it without asking. I have not stopped thinking about whether she would have done it if Theo had not been the one who coughed. I think she would have. I think she had decided at the elevator, when she looked at her arm, that she was going to do it the next time the situation called for it, and the situation called for it in the barn, and she did. I do not know if her arm was actually going to turn. I'm not sure she knew either. I think she was looking at it the way a person looks at a fault line they have been told about all their life, waiting for the first crack. I think she had decided not to wait for the crack. I'm writing this down because I want the record to say that Marisol Domingo, who was 46 and had a daughter at a university in a state she will never see again, walked out of a barn at dawn on the 7th day of our trip to the Pinnacle, and saved the lives of 2 other people, one of whom was already dying and one of whom is still walking, for now. The official record, if any record survives, will say that she was lost. The official record is not enough. I'm going to stop writing soon because the light is fading and I want to sleep before I start walking. I want to say one more thing. The rule we were taught was not wrong. It was simplified. It was simplified by people who had survived enough dawns to make a rule, but not enough to make a complete one. The full rule, the one I am writing here for whoever finds this, is longer than the one I was told at the gate, and it is going to be longer still after the next person learns the next thing it does not yet contain. That is how the rule works. That is how all of them work. Somebody dies, and the rule gets longer, and the next person carries a slightly better version of it down the road. Esme's version was a sentence. Mine is a paragraph. Yours will be a page. I am not going to pretend that this makes anything better. It does not bring Theo back, and it does not bring Marisol back, and it does not make the road north any shorter. But it is the only thing we have, the rule and the next person. I'm going to leave this pad in the glove box of this truck with a note on the windshield that says, "Read this." I do not know if anyone will. I do not know if the Pinnacle is real or if it is just a story that people at Bowman's Reach told each other to give themselves a direction to face. I have been walking towards it for 11 days, and I have not seen any sign that it exists, but there is a direction. There is north. There is the road. There is the next dawn which I will not be moving in. And there is, somewhere up ahead, a place I have been told has snow, and Theo wanted to see snow, and I am going to try to see it for him. If you find this, if you are the person who opens the glove box and reads this, I want you to do one thing for me. Travel in the middle of the day. Travel in the middle of the night. Do not move at dawn, not before, not during, not for an hour after to be safe, because 40 minutes is not enough. And we learned that the hard way. Lie in the open if you must. Do not get into structures, do not cough. And if you find a barn east of a county road, 22 miles south of an empty farmhouse, with a board over the basement window, do not go inside. Walk around it. There is nothing in there that will hurt you. But there was a boy in the hayloft once, with his face against the boards, and a woman who walked out the front door, into the dawn, and I do not think either of them would want company. Keep walking, north if you can. The road is the rule. The rule is the road. That is all we have, and it is more than nothing. I'm going to stop writing now. The light is almost gone, and I want to be asleep before full dark, because tomorrow I am going to walk before the sun comes up, and I'm going to stop a long time before the sky begins to thin, and I'm going to lie in the open grass with my face in the dirt for an hour, and I'm going to listen to whatever passes by me on its way to the place the sun is coming from. And then I am going to get up and I am going to keep going. That is the rule I am writing for myself. That is the only one I have left.